My name is Brianna. I am 23 years old. And for 23 years, I lived as a servant inside my own home. Not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally. Every morning began the same way. At exactly 5 o'clock a.m., a cheap plastic clock on a concrete floor screamed me awake. Not a bedroom floor, a basement floor. There were no windows, no sunrise, no birdsong, no warmth, just darkness. And the mechanical groan of the furnace, 3 feet from my head, rattling like something alive and angry. In winter, that furnace was the only thing standing between me and frostbite. In summer, it turned the air into something wet and thick that sat inside your lungs like a fist. But no matter the season, when that alarm rang, I stood up immediately, because hesitation had consequences. I had learned that before I was old enough to understand what consequences meant. By 5:15, I was upstairs, scrubbing marble counters that cost more than most people earn in a year, preheating a stove I was never allowed to cook for myself on, pulling eggs and bacon from a refrigerator I wasn't permitted to open after dark, moving silently through a house that, from the outside, looked like the definition of the American dream. We lived in a pristine 2-story colonial in Fairfield County, Connecticut. The kind of neighborhood where every lawn was trimmed with surgical precision, where every driveway held a European car polished to a mirror shine, where the neighbors were surgeons, attorneys, hedge fund partners, successful families, respected families, and from the street, the Patterson household appeared flawless. Inside, it was my nightmare. The kitchen alone was larger than most apartments. Marble counters, imported fixtures, cabinets that closed without a sound. I knew every vein in that marble because I polished it. Every single day. At 7 o'clock a.m., Gerald Patterson would descend the staircase with his newspaper tucked under his arm, his watch catching the morning light, and settle into his leather chair like a man who had never once questioned whether he deserved to sit there. He never looked at me, not once, not in 23 years. "Is it done?" he would ask, eyes on the paper. "Yes, Mr. Patterson. The coffee is weak today. Make it stronger tomorrow." That was the entirety of most conversations we had. Commands, corrections, silence. I would place his plate on the table, always the good china, and retreat to the sink before he even lifted his fork. My place was not at that table. My place was beside the counter, eating whatever cold scraps remained after the family finished. But the hardest part wasn't the basement. It wasn't the hunger. It wasn't the exhaustion that settled so deep into your bones you stopped noticing it, the way you stop hearing a sound that never stops. The hardest part was what they called me, or rather, what they refused to call me. Upstairs, my brother Brandon slept in a sunlit corner bedroom with bay windows overlooking the garden. He woke near noon most days. His room held things I had only ever seen in advertisements: enormous television screens, gaming systems, rows of shoes that cost more than every item I owned combined. He attended a prestigious private academy, $45,000 a year. When neighbors asked why I wasn't enrolled anywhere, Gerald always smiled politely and said, "We homeschool Brianna." The truth? No one taught me a single thing. I learned to read from discarded magazines. I taught myself math by counting grocery change. Knowledge was something I gathered in stolen moments, like contraband, because if they saw me reading, they took the magazine away. When Brandon turned 18, Gerald handed him the keys to a brand new car with a bow on the hood and tears in his eyes. I didn't even have a driver's license. I didn't have identification. Not a single document on this earth proving I existed. Once, when I was 12, I asked Donna about it. She barely looked up from her shopping catalog. "Your documents were lost in a fire," she said, casually, "the way you discuss the weather. Replacing them is complicated. You're better off here." I believed her. Why wouldn't I? She was my mother. At least that's what I thought. Dinner was always the same ritual, 3 seats filled, 3 voices at the table, 3 people laughing about things that happened in a world I was never allowed to enter. I stood in the doorway, waiting to clear plates, watching like a ghost pressed against glass. One night when I was 14, I made the mistake of asking why I couldn't sit with them. Donna laughed, not loudly, not cruelly enough for someone to overhear, just enough to make me feel like the stupidest creature alive. The table only seats 3, Brianna. It seated 6. I had counted. More times than I could remember, pressing my fingers against each chair like I was trying to memorize something that would be taken away. That was the night a quiet realization took root inside me like a crack forming in concrete. Slow, invisible, irreversible. I wasn't part of this family, I never had been. Gerald called them the family rules. He'd taped them inside my basement door when I was 5 years old. 5 years old. I read them every single morning before climbing the stairs. Rule 1, you do not sit at the family table. Rule 2, you do not call us mom or dad. Rule 3, you do not leave the house without permission. Rule 4, you do not speak to strangers. Punishments were never detailed. They didn't need to be. The thin cane hidden behind the pantry boxes said everything that needed saying. When I was 7, I accidentally called Donna mommy in front of her sister. Just once. One small word. The welts on my palms lasted weeks. When I was 16, I tried to run. I had been saving grocery change for months, every coin hidden beneath a loose floor tile, pressing each one into the gap with shaking hands, terrified they'd check. When I had just over $17, I walked 3 miles to the bus station. The wind was sharp that day. October. I remember thinking the cold felt different outside that house, cleaner somehow. I didn't get far. The police returned me within hours. No identification, they told Gerald at the door. Is she yours? He smiled, warmly, the smile of a man completely in control. Our daughter, troubled girl. Thank you for bringing her home. The officers left. Gerald locked the door. He didn't speak for a long moment, just stood there, letting the silence press down on me like weight. Then I spent 3 days in the basement without food. When he finally opened it, he leaned close enough that I could feel his breath on my forehead. Without papers, you don't exist, he whispered. And if you don't exist, no one will ever help you. After that, I never tried to leave again. Brandon wasn't cruel the way Gerald was cruel. He never raised a hand to me. He simply didn't see me. To him, I was part of the house, like the dishwasher, like the furnace. Functional, forgettable. Brianna, coffee. Brianna, clean my room. Brianna, wash the car. When friends visited, he'd gesture vaguely in my direction. Our housekeeper. Never sister, never family, never anything with a heartbeat. No one questioned it. Because I looked nothing like them. They all shared the same sandy hair and warm brown eyes. Mine were green, deep green, almost emerald in certain light. Once I asked about it. Donna slapped me hard enough to make my ears ring for an hour. Stop asking stupid questions. So I stopped. Donna told me something once when I was 15. I had asked, quietly, carefully, the way you ask questions when you know the wrong answer might cost you, why I was different. She didn't hesitate. Some children are born to be loved, she said. Her eyes hardened into something flat and absolute. Some are born to help others. You're the second kind, Brianna. That is your purpose. For 8 more years, I believed her. I believed it through every cold morning, every skipped meal, every night on a concrete floor listening to the furnace breathe. I believed I was born for this, because if the alternative were true, if I had been meant for something more, then the cruelty of what was taken from me would be too enormous to survive. So I chose the smaller wound. I chose to believe I was nothing, until the day of Brandon's wedding. Until the moment a man I had never met looked at my face, really looked, and began to tremble. Until he pulled me aside and asked a question that didn't just shatter my understanding of my life, it shattered the floor beneath it. Do you know who your real mother is? Pause. Sit with that. Imagine living 23 years believing you belonged somewhere, only to hear a stranger suggest you never did. That the life you endured, the basement, the rules, the hunger, the welts, was never supposed to be yours at all. If you have ever felt invisible inside a place that was supposed to be home, stay with me. Because what happened next unraveled 23 years of lies, thread by thread, until the truth stood naked in the light. And it was only the beginning. The wedding announcement arrived 6 months before the ceremony. From the moment it was printed on thick ivory cardstock, the house transformed into something unrecognizable, louder, shinier, humming with a particular kind of ambition that fills a room like perfume. Brandon and Victoria Whitmore would be married at the Ritz-Carlton in White Plains. 200 guests. Live orchestra. 5-tier cake shipped in from Manhattan. Every detail curated to announce, "We have arrived." Gerald practically floated through the house for weeks, repeating the same phrase until it wore grooves into the air. "This is the biggest day of our lives. The Whitmores are old money, Connecticut aristocracy. We need to make an impression." Donna treated the wedding like a military campaign. She coordinated floral arrangements, debated linen shades, obsessed over seating charts with the focus of someone whose survival depended on them. When her champagne-colored designer dress arrived, she held it against herself in the mirror for a long time, the way you hold something that finally proves you are who you've always insisted you were. I helped with everything. Of course I did. Addressing invitations until my hand cramped, sorting RSVPs, standing in alterations lines, dry cleaning runs, running every errand no one else wanted to bother with. And somewhere in those 6 months, something dangerous started growing inside me. Hope. I imagined walking down the aisle in something soft and lavender. I imagined being introduced. I imagined Donna looking at me, just once, without calculation in her eyes. I practiced walking in heels when no one was watching. I was 23 years old, and I was practicing walking in heels in secret, alone, in a basement. Let that land. 3 weeks before the wedding, Donna sat me down at the kitchen island. Her posture was the posture of a woman delivering a business decision. "We need to discuss your role," she said. My heart lifted in my chest like something that had been underwater finally breaking the surface. "Am I walking with the bridesmaids?" She laughed. Small, dismissive, the sound of a door closing. "No, Brianna, you'll be helping with service. Passing champagne, making sure guests have what they need." I heard the words individually before they assembled into meaning. "You want me to work the wedding?" "It isn't work," she corrected smoothly. "It's helping." Her eyes sharpened. "You know how you are, awkward, clumsy. If you stood up there in front of the Whitmores, they'd wonder what was wrong with you." A pause, perfectly timed. "Is that what you want, to embarrass Brandon?" The numbness spread through me like cold water. "No," I whispered. "Good." She was already walking away. That night, the finished invitations arrived, embossed lettering, heavy paper, beautiful. I went through every single one, every name on every envelope. My name wasn't listed anywhere. Not with the family. Not among the guests. Not in any capacity on any card. I didn't exist on a single page of my own brother's wedding. The rehearsal dinner was held at a country club where everything, the tablecloths, the lighting, the laughter, seemed designed to remind you of exactly how far outside of it you were. I wore a black dress and a white apron. Donna had selected both personally. "You look professional," she'd said, adjusting my collar with the kind of clinical precision that makes your skin crawl. "Smile, don't speak unless spoken to. And stay invisible." Invisible. The one skill I had mastered so completely it had become indistinguishable from who I was. I moved through clusters of guests carrying a silver tray. No one saw me, until Victoria did. She appeared through the crowd, engaged, radiant, her ring scattering prisms of light across the terrace. "You're Brandon's sister, right, Brianna?" The question hit me so hard I nearly dropped the tray. "Yes, ma'am." Her brow creased. Something genuine and human crossed her face. "Why aren't you sitting with the family?" Before I could say a single word, Donna materialized beside me like a shadow with a smile. "Brianna prefers to help. She's always been shy. Happier in the background." Her hand rested on my arm, not warmly, possessively, the way you hold something you own. Victoria hesitated. I could see the uncertainty in her eyes, but politeness won, as it almost always does. She moved on. I resumed circulating, and that was when I noticed him. Richard Whitmore stood near the railing, older, distinguished, a glass of scotch untouched in his hand. He wasn't glancing around the way wealthy guests do, with comfortable, bored possession. He was staring at me, not with curiosity, with recognition. His face had drained of color. Slowly, as if crossing the distance between us required effort, he walked toward me. "Excuse me." His voice had a tension in it, like a held breath. "What's your name?" "Brianna, sir." He repeated it softly, slowly, like a man confirming something. "Brianna." A long silence. Then, "Do you happen to know who your birth mother is?" The question was so unexpected it took several seconds for it to register as real. Before I could respond, he was already searching my face with a focus that made my skin prickle, scanning my eyes, my jawline, like he was reading something written there. For a moment, I thought he would say more. Instead, he turned abruptly, walked toward the parking lot, phone pressed to his ear before he even reached the steps. I watched him disappear into the dark. When I turned back, Donna was watching too. Her smile hadn't moved a single muscle, but her knuckles were white around her champagne glass. The night before the wedding, celebration filled the house like smoke. Laughter drifted down the stairs. Glasses clinked. Music pulsed through the floorboards. Down in the basement, there was only the furnace and the drip of a leaky pipe. I sat on my mattress, smoothing the apron I would wear tomorrow, like I was ironing the uniform of my own imprisonment. In my hands, I held the only photograph that had ever included me. I was 5 years old, standing at the far edge of the frame while Gerald, Donna, and Brandon clustered near a Christmas tree. They were touching, laughing, connected. I was alone, arms at my sides, looking at something outside the frame. In 23 years, not a single photograph existed of me standing beside my parents. Not one. And for the first time, that fact didn't just hurt, it asked a question. Why? Why didn't I look like them? Why was I hidden? Why had Richard Whitmore looked at me like someone seeing a ghost? I folded the photograph, told myself the same lie I had always told myself. This is your life. Accept it. I had no idea the ground beneath those words was already cracking open. I woke at 4:00 a.m. The house was silent. The kind of silence that only exists before something that cannot be undone. I moved upstairs without lights. Began breakfast by memory. Eggs Benedict, fresh squeezed orange juice, toast warmed to within 1 degree of Gerald's preference. By 6, every surface gleamed, silver aligned, china flawless. Coffee steaming at exactly the strength he required. Then I carried the garment steamer into the guest room where Victoria's wedding dress hung inside its protective bag. When I unzipped it, my breath caught. Vera Wang, hand-beaded bodice. Cathedral-length train that pooled across the floor like liquid light. It was worth more than every item I had ever touched combined. I worked carefully, methodically, terrified of making a mistake, the way people are terrified when they know the cost of error will fall entirely on them. Donna appeared in the doorway, silk robe, hair in rollers, eyes already calculating. Don't touch the beading, those crystals are worth more than you. Yes, Mrs. Patterson. She watched me for a moment, scanning for imperfection like a quality inspector on a factory floor. When we arrive at the hotel, you'll enter through the service entrance. Don't let guests see you coming in. Yes, Mrs. Patterson. And Brianna, her voice dropped. Do not embarrass us. This is the most important day of Brandon's life. If you do anything to ruin it, I will make you regret it. From downstairs, Gerald's voice cracked through the ceiling. Brianna, where's my coffee? Donna smirked faintly and left. I stood there, holding the steamer, staring at a dress made for a life I wasn't allowed to stand near. And something shifted inside me. Small, quiet, irreversible. This will be the last time. I didn't know how yet, or when. But the thought formed clearly, like ice forming over still water. Enough. The grand ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton looked like something from a dream someone else was having. Crystal chandeliers cascaded from the ceiling. White roses framed the aisle. Gold chairs shimmered. I entered through the loading dock. A catering manager shoved a tray into my hands without making eye contact. Champagne service. Keep moving. Smile. Don't engage guests. I stepped into the ballroom. Designer gowns swept past me. Diamond necklaces caught the light. Men in tailored suits discussed mergers with the easy confidence of people who have never once wondered if they belonged in a room. Gerald passed within inches of me, didn't glance. Donna paused long enough to whisper, Your posture is terrible, stand straight. Then moved on. Brandon appeared, laughing with his groomsmen. He saw me and waved casually, the way you'd wave at a piece of furniture you'd walked past 1,000 times. Brianna, make sure there's extra shrimp at my table. You know how Dad gets. One of his friends squinted in my direction. Who's that? Brandon didn't hesitate. Our housekeeper, she's been with us forever. Our housekeeper, not sister. not family, not a person with a name that deserved to be said with any weight at all. I kept my face still. Reactions invited punishment. I kept moving. But across the ballroom, Richard Whitmore was watching again. Still, intent, like a man who had done the math and was waiting for someone else to catch up. At 4 o'clock, the music began. Victoria floated down the aisle. Brandon waited at the altar, golden, confident, certain of his place in every room he'd ever entered. Gerald and Donna wept in the front row. Actual tears, for their son, for the life they had built. I stood 50 feet away, holding champagne I wasn't allowed to drink, watching a family celebrate itself. And for just a moment, I let myself imagine it. Sitting in that front row, wearing something soft and beautiful, being introduced, being seen. But that life didn't exist. Maybe it never had. The couple kissed. The room erupted. Rose petals fell. Brandon and Victoria walked back down the aisle. As they passed me, Donna's eyes found mine. Her expression carried one silent command: don't forget your place. I lowered my gaze. But behind them, Richard Whitmore hadn't clapped. Not once. He hadn't taken his eyes off me the entire ceremony. At the reception, I worked the Whitmore family table. Richard barely touched his food. When I reached for his plate, his hand closed gently around my wrist. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I need to ask you something." "Yes, sir." "Your name is Brianna." "Yes." "Brianna Patterson." "Yes, sir." His hand trembled before he released me. "Do you know who your mother is?" The question again, the same impossible question. "I live with Mr. and Mrs. Patterson," I answered carefully. "They've raised me since I was a baby." Something inside his expression fractured. Pain, recognition, grief. He stood abruptly. Through the terrace doors, I watched him pace, urgent, private, desperate, phone pressed to his ear. At the family table, Donna noticed too. She leaned toward Gerald. Gerald turned, found me. And for the first time in my entire life, I saw fear on Gerald Patterson's face. Soon after, the photographer called for family portraits. The Whitmores gathered. Then the Pattersons stepped forward. I stayed back with my tray. The photographer frowned and pointed at me. "What about her? Is she family?" The silence that followed was the loudest sound I had ever heard. Gerald's smile tightened. Donna stared at the floor. Brandon said nothing. Then Richard's voice cut through the room. "Yes, she's family." My entire body went still. "Brianna, please come stand beside me." My legs moved before my brain could form a thought. Gerald's face flushed crimson, but he couldn't object. Not to the man who had paid for his son's wedding. Richard placed his hand on my shoulder, warm, steady, like a hand that had been waiting a long time to land there. "Right here," he said softly. "This is where you belong." The camera flashed. Richard studied the preview image, his eyes filled with something I didn't have a name for yet. "Those eyes," he whispered. "That chin, my God." Then he pulled out his phone. "It's her," I heard him say quietly. "I'm certain. Get the file, the FBI cold case from 2003. Prepare a DNA kit tonight." The world stopped. FBI cold case. 2003. The blood drained from my face. Moments later, Gerald's hand clamped around my arm like a vice. "Outside, now." He dragged me through a service corridor. "What did you tell him?" "Nothing, I swear. Why is Whitmore asking about your mother?" "I don't know." He shoved me against the wall. Crates rattled. "If you say anything to anyone about our family," he whispered, "I will throw you onto the street. No money, no clothes, you'll be homeless within a week. Do you understand?" Donna appeared, her heels clicking like a metronome. "Whatever Mr. Whitmore wants, you tell him nothing." She leaned in close. "We are your family. Without us, you would be dead somewhere." Then she smiled. That perfect public smile. "Now get back to work." They walked away, left me shaking beside stacks of champagne. Gerald had told me for years, without papers, you don't exist. But Richard Whitmore looked at me like I did. Like I was someone. The 72 hours after the DNA swab were the longest of my life. I woke at 5, scrubbed floors, made coffee at exactly the right strength. But nothing felt the same. Every command sounded smaller now. Every insult landed differently. Because behind all of it, a question was burning inside me like a match held to paper. What if they stole me? 3 nights later, a message. Results are in. Can you meet? 10 o'clock m. Cafe on Main Street. RW the next morning, I told Donna I needed cleaning supplies. She didn't look up. Be back by noon. I walked out the front door. And for the first time since I was 16 years old, I kept walking. The cafe smelled like cinnamon and espresso. Richard was already there. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in 3 days. There was a manila envelope on the table between us. I sat down. He didn't stall, didn't ease into it. He slid the envelope across the table. My fingers shook as I opened it. One line, highlighted in yellow. Probability of biological relationship. 99.97% conclusion. The tested individual, Brianna Patterson, is the biological daughter of Margaret Eleanor Whitmore. I read it. Read it again. Read it a third time. The words didn't change. You're my niece, Richard said quietly. You're Margaret's daughter. The world tilted on its axis. This is real, I whispered. It's real, he exhaled. I've already contacted the FBI. The cold case has been reopened. My stomach dropped. In 2003, my sister's baby was kidnapped from Stanford Hospital, taken from the nursery. The FBI opened a case. They never found her. His voice broke on the next sentence. My sister searched for 5 years. She hired investigators. She never stopped believing her daughter was alive. A pause. She died believing that. She died. My mother, a woman whose face I had never seen, had spent 5 years looking for me. She had believed I was alive. She had believed in me while I was in a basement, polishing marble, learning obedience through pain. While she was somewhere in the world, slowly breaking apart from the inside, she had never stopped. The grief that moved through me in that moment wasn't mine. It was hers. Decades of it, compressed into one sentence spoken across a cafe table. I'll call you. I swabbed my cheek, sealed the sample, handed it back. And when I walked back out into the sunlight, nothing looked the same. A week later, the Pattersons drove through the iron gates of the Whitmore estate. Gerald was practically vibrating with excitement. Donna had bought a new suit. They had no idea they were walking into the last room their freedom would ever occupy. Inside, Richard greeted Gerald warmly, shook his hand, kissed Donna's cheek. They didn't notice the 2 people waiting in the adjacent room, a man in a gray suit, a woman holding a folder. Tea was poured, polite conversation. Gerald bragged lightly about Brandon. Donna complimented the Dacre. Then Richard leaned forward. I wanted to discuss something before Brandon arrives. It concerns Brianna. Donna's fingers tightened around her teacup. She's been with your family since infancy. Yes, Donna said quickly. We adopted her. Richard opened a leather portfolio. Interesting, because there are no adoption records, no birth certificate, no hospital documentation anywhere in this region. Gerald's smile flickered. Records get lost. I checked every hospital. Silence. Richard placed 2 documents on the table. The DNA report. The FBI cold case from 2003. This confirms Brianna is Margaret Whitmore's biological daughter. He tapped the file. And this confirms Margaret's child was abducted from Stanford Hospital 23 years ago. Donna's teacup slipped. Shattered on the floor, Gerald stood. This is absurd. The door opened. A man stepped in, flashed a badge. Gerald Patterson, Donna Patterson, Special Agent Morrison, FBI. You are under investigation for human trafficking, document fraud, and child endangerment. The handcuffs clicked. Gerald struggled. Actually struggled. The same man who had once made me feel like the most powerless thing alive, thrashing against 2 federal agents in an estate sitting room. Donna sobbed. Brianna, tell them it's a mistake. I looked at her, calmly, clearly, like I was seeing her for the first time without the distortion of fear. You raised me as a servant. We gave you everything. You gave me a mattress on concrete. I stepped closer. You took my identity. You took my childhood. You took my mother from me, and you made me believe I deserved all of it. Gerald's voice, venomous even in handcuffs. You knew exactly what we were doing, he snarled at Donna. Don't pretend otherwise. Brandon and Victoria walked in from the front hall, still sun-kissed from Bali, still glowing. Victoria's smile vanished first. What the hell is going on? No one answered, because the truth was already speaking for itself. The federal charges came down within a month. The investigation uncovered everything. In 2003, Gerald and Donna Patterson had purchased a baby through an underground adoption network. Price, $15,000 cash. On a ledger recovered from a storage unit, my name appeared between a payment column and a delivery date. Like inventory, like cargo, like I had never been a person at all. Gerald Patterson, 18 years in federal prison. Donna Patterson, 12 years. Their assets were frozen. The Fairfield house seized, the marble counters, the sub-zero refrigerator, the basement where I slept. Gone. Brandon's world collapsed next. Richard Whitmore withdrew every dollar of support. The wedding debt landed on Brandon's name. His position at Whitmore Properties terminated. Victoria filed for divorce 3 weeks later. I overheard part of the call. "I can't be tied to this. Your parents trafficked a child." The golden boy who had never struggled a day in his life suddenly understood, for the very first time, what it felt like to have the floor disappear beneath you. 6 months later, he called me. His voice was thin, unfamiliar. "I'm in trouble, no job, no apartment, no one will hire me. I was wondering if maybe you could help me, just a loan. Until I get back on my feet." I let the silence sit for a moment. "Brandon, did you ever help me?" Silence. "Did you ever ask why I slept in the basement? Did you ever stop Gerald when he hit me?" "I didn't know." "You knew. You just didn't care." A breath. "I'm not helping you, not because I hate you, but because you need to learn something no one ever taught you." I inhaled slowly. "Actions have consequences, so does silence." I hung up. My hand trembled. My heart didn't. 3 months after the trial, the trust was released. The banker slid the document across the desk. Beneficiary: Brianna Ashford Whitmore Trust Value, $12,847,329.16. I stared at the name for a long time. Not the number, the name, Brianna Ashford Whitmore. The name my mother gave me, the name that had been buried for 23 years. Richard found something else in the estate archives, a letter, written by my mother the week I was born. I keep it beside my bed now. I read it every morning. It says, "My darling Brianna, if you ever read this, know that you were the greatest gift of my life. From the moment I first held you, from the moment I looked into those green eyes, I knew you were meant for something extraordinary. No matter where life takes you, you are loved, you are wanted, you are enough, always your mother." For 23 years, I believed the opposite of every single word in that letter. I believed I was born to serve. I believed I was the second kind of child. I believed I was lucky to exist at all. Now I read those words and I let them do what they were always meant to do. I let them be true. 1 year later, I opened an acceptance letter. Yale University, full scholarship, a program supporting survivors of trafficking. I cried for an hour, not from sadness. From the realization that I had survived something that was designed to break me, and instead of being broken, I had simply been delayed. My life hadn't been destroyed. It had been stolen. And now I was taking it back. I chose psychology. I want to become a therapist. I want to sit across from people who were told they were nothing and help them understand what I finally understand. That the cruelty of others is never a verdict on your worth. That being invisible doesn't mean you were never there. That being unloved doesn't mean you were unlovable. It only means the wrong people were given the privilege of raising you. I visited Gerald and Donna once, not for forgiveness, for finality. The prison was gray and cold and smelled like institutional bleach. Gerald looked smaller, not dangerous, not powerful, just old. Donna looked fragile in a way she had never allowed herself to look before. "You came," she whispered. "I'm not here to reconcile," I said. I met Gerald's eyes. "For 23 years, you made me believe I was worthless. You made me believe I was born to serve, that it was my purpose, my nature. You were wrong. I was born to be loved, and I am." Donna sobbed. I turned, walked out, didn't look back. Today I write this from my dorm room at Yale. It's small, nothing like the estate, nothing like the house. But my name is on the door. My name. Brianna Ashford Whitmore. Some mornings I still wake at 5. Old habits don't die easily when they've been welded into you by fear. But now when I wake, I make coffee. I open a textbook. I study for a future that belongs entirely to me. On my nightstand sit two things: my birth certificate and my mother's letter. For 23 years, I believed I was born to serve. Now I know the truth. I was born to be loved. And I intend to spend every day of the rest of my life making sure someone else learns that too. If there is one thing I want you to carry from my story, it's this. Sometimes the life you were forced into is not the life that was meant for you. Sometimes the truth is buried under decades of deliberate lies. Sometimes freedom doesn't arrive like a sunrise. Sometimes it arrives like evidence on a cafe table, like a stranger's trembling hand on your shoulder, like a name you never knew was yours. So if you've ever been told you were less, if you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been made to believe your worth was theirs to decide, remember this: it never was. You are wanted. You are enough. And your story is not over.